Welcome to Caring Connections. I'm Salley Gibney. You know, every time you smile or wave or give someone a hug, you make a caring connection. My guest today is a pro at making caring connections. Everywhere she goes, on the air and in everywhere. Welcome, Alison.
Hi, Sally.
Bologna.
It's nice
so
to see
good
you.
to see you.
You too.
Now, I know most of my audience knows you from being on television.
If they wake up very early.
Like
very early.
Your show is what time?
4:30 to 7 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
And we're finding more and more people wake up early and go to sleep earlier. So we've got a pretty good following on NBC 10 Sunrise.
You know, I was reading where people are watching the morning news now.
They really are.
And if they're watching something later in the day or in the evening, they're watching a movie or something to kind of unwind.
The morning news is where it all happens right now. It's where we set you up for the day. And I work, of course, with Mario Hilario, who's one of my dearest friends. So it's a dream.
Well, you're such a team. You really
we are a team.
You're such a team. Well, I know most of our audience here are going to want to know something about you. So tell us a little bit about you, where you grew up, your family, all that kind of thing.
Okay. So I grew up in San Diego, actually.
Oh, really?
But we moved around a lot. So I was born actually in Connecticut, so I'm a native New Englander. But my family moved around a lot. So I'm the oldest of three girls. Started off in Connecticut. We moved to Maryland, Massachusetts, but the chunk of my growing up was in San Diego. Then I went to undergraduate school to Northwestern in Chicago, outside of Chicago. And then my life brought me to Columbia and New York City. So I moved to Rhode Island from there.
Oh, no. Now, where were you living in New York City?
I lived in the Village.
Oh, you did?
210 Thompson Street. 210 Thompson Street. And at that time, it was really easy to get in and out of 30 Rock. So I was in the producer ranks at NBC News.
Oh.
So I produced for Dateline NBC.
Really?
And that's what brought me to Rhode Island, because NBC owned Channel 10. It was what we called an O&O, owned and operated by the network. So there was an opening. I used my vacation time at Dateline to do a tryout.
Oh.
I was so-so. I had a lot to learn. But I did land the job. So I moved to Rhode Island in October of 2002.
Okay.
So I was at Channel 10 until July of 06, went up to Boston. And then when the 7 o'clock show started at Channel 10, in September of 2010, I came back. And I've been at Channel 10 ever since then to do the 7 o'clock show, and then switched over to morning so I could do some more of my community work too, in partnership with everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, did you always want to do the news? I mean,
was
there always something that interested you about that?
Well, I was an English major in undergrad. And Northwestern has one of the best journalism schools in the country, Medill. So I took a couple of journalism classes, and they were hard.
Oh, really?
So I decided I wanted the challenge, and I transferred into Medill my sophomore year. And I actually was going to be a newspaper reporter, and did work for a newspaper for a period of time.
Oh, really?
And then one thing led to another, and when I ended up at Columbia, I ended up working on documentaries and doing news. But I've always been the type of person who likes to meet other people, strike up a conversation, and tell a story. So yeah, it made sense. And the fact that you can make a living doing it worked.
Well, yeah, how lucky are you?
So that worked. But there's no journalists in my family. Everybody in my family are all business-oriented people. So I'm the only Bologna that does
been doing
news.
something like that. Tell me about your family.
My parents just moved to Rhode Island.
Oh, nice.
So my mom and dad live in Jamestown, Rhode Island. We're a tight-knit family, 3 girls. I'm the oldest. Jessica lives in upstate New York. She's a business-oriented person in the hospitality field, and the mom to two twins, my godchildren, George and Sella. And then my youngest sister, Jackie, is 40 years old, and she lives with a intellectual and developmental disability called tuberous sclerosis. So she is nonverbal, autistic, and she lives with my parents still, and she's involved in 2 different nonprofits in Rhode Island. Life, which stands for Living in Fulfilling Environments, and Looking Upwards. And she's very much a part of the organization I started Shri too, in spirit, but eventually she'll be working the front desk for us.
Oh, is that
when the time comes, and
now,
help with our adaptive program.
Tell me how it was growing up with a sibling who was dealing
challenging.
with this.
Yeah, especially as a teenage girl, right? I come from a family that's very driven and motivated, and I know we've gotten to know each other over the weeks, and you were asking me if a lot of my family's like me. Yes, we are all type A's. We're very busy. We like to get things done and be productive and also give back to the community. But it was challenging. I was 6 years old when Jackie was diagnosed, and it's hard when you're a teenager trying to explain to people that she's your sister, she's different, but she deserves the same sort of compassion as everybody else. Jackie was in a public school. I went to a private school, so did my sister, but Jackie was in a public school in San Diego in which they integrated her into a special ed classroom, and that was very innovative at the time. Now it's like we see it all the time. But I feel like my parents were very cutting edge with including Jackie in the general community, which I loved. But it's a lot of educating of people at that time about being compassionate, understanding, and patient.
And when you're a young child yourself, it must have been kind of difficult, you know, because
it's moments.
Because you would see people hurting her.
Well,
or staring. I mean,
and maybe they don't mean anything by it, but I would get very defensive, no doubt about it, Sally. I would get, this is my sister Jackie, she can't speak, would you like to meet her? Yeah. I've softened those edges since then.
But you would be
But I would be speaking for her. And my sister Jess and I would often talk a lot. Like, my parents had to spend extra amounts of time, obviously, with Jackie for all the right reasons, because she had profound special needs. But it does shift a family around and where resources are spent, time and otherwise. But I think it made us closer in the long run. It's challenging now as my parents are getting older and trying to figure out, you know, what's next with Jackie. And those are the very difficult decisions we're making right now.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it's something, because time goes by.
Yes, and Jackie is not going to talk, not going to have certain skills as she gets older. So we just have to make sure she's taken care of. And my dad's done a lot of really good planning, and we'll figure out the next stage of life, right?
Which is really, I know my nephew is autistic. My sister and her husband adopted him when he was 5. And he's totally never been verbal, and it's really, he's been a gift to our family. He's been a gift to the other children or young people in the family, because it's a real challenge.
Yeah, it really is. The day-to-day stuff that you take for granted is a little bit different when you're alongside somebody who needs a lot more attention to do basic things. So Jackie can't be left alone. You have to hold her hand. If you're walking down the street, she would run into traffic. So, you know, profound special needs. But that was one of the reasons why I really wanted my folks to move closer to me as they get older, so I could help, but also because Rhode Island really does a good job with social services. And I learned that through my community work, not just meeting executive directors of the social service agencies that serve the disabled, but the direct service professionals who are with people like Jackie each and every day for, you know, 8 hours a day.
And you know, Jackie's been a gift to you because it has brought out this part of you, this side of you, that has led you to do Shri and all of that, which I really, really want to talk about. Now, so what about your life right now?
So Channel 10 is good, but my days start very early. I'm up at 3 in the morning. You were asking me earlier about what my day looks like. So it'll start at 3. I've already done it's 10:30 in the morning right now. I've already done an 8-hour day. But I spend my mornings professionally at Channel 10 doing my job as a news anchor, and also reporting too. I do enterprise reporting on the opioids epidemic right now.
Wow.
I have a story airing tonight at 5 o'clock about the latest numbers and trends.
On Channel 10?
On Channel 10.
Oh, I'm going to have to watch that.
Every other week on Wednesdays at 5, they're enterprise reports. So they dig deeper into the epidemic that we're seeing. And I'm talking to everybody from those in recovery to those on the front lines, measuring and reacting and activating in certain neighborhoods the trends to try and save lives. But then in the middle of the day, I transition. I get on my jeans and my Shri t-shirt, and I'm running the organization with a whole team of managers, but also teaching in the community. So right now, my main class is I teach yoga at the Hope Center. It's a day program, an amazing day program for adults living with Alzheimer's. And my mother had been going there for a period of time, so I was teaching her in her class.
So your mother, you hadn't mentioned that, your mother is in the throes of Alzheimer's. Which is another very challenging. Yeah, I know my mom had Alzheimer's too, so I remember.
It's challenging.
So well,
but again, the resources in Rhode Island have been good and strong. So she doesn't come to my class anymore. She's at home with a one-on-one companion with my dad, but she's doing okay considering. But it's a lot.
But again, it's a lot to deal with.
Sure. Yeah, it is.
You know, and it's interesting because people looking at you on television would never know that these are things that you're dealing with and facing in your life. And you're doing it, you know.
And I think that gives right.
Exactly.
Life throws you curveballs, and you do it. I mean, my
dad
either
catch the ball or
sure. My father does the day-to-day heavy lifting, obviously, with my mother, and we try to have healthy boundaries as well. When he moved to Rhode Island, that I was there to help and to support, and also to enjoy one another's company, but also to give each other space too, which I think is really important.
Yeah, because sometimes you want to do it all. You know, you
That's
want
how
to
it
make
started.
better.
Yes, and I'm a doer and a fixer, and I like to get things done really fast. I'm also quite impulsive.
Oh no!
so yes, my partner Dave balances all of that out. Let me tell you, we are both Sagittarius.
And so am I.
Yes.
Oh yes. Now, I'm so glad you mentioned Dave. Please tell us about Dave.
Well, you got to meet Dave over the weekend in Vermont.
What a sweetheart he is.
He's wonderful. Yes. So we've been together 15 years.
Not only is he just one, but he's awfully. He's a doll. He's very good looking.
Oh, he'd be very flattered, Sally, if you heard that.
And very, very
Dave
nice.
and I balance each other out very well. We met in news.
How did you
told
do
myself
that?
I would
tell
never.
Tell us about that.
Yes. So he is the chief photographer at Channel 5 in Boston. And when I was in between, so I was at Channel 10, then went to Boston, came back. I was at a different station. I was at Fox 25, but we both had Tuesday, Wednesdays off. So who has Tuesday, Wednesdays off? Not that many people. So we were always bumping into each other on different stories. So we were at a big mill fire in Uxbridge, and we had a lot of downtime in between live shots. So we just kind of got to know one another, and we were friends for a long time. And now he runs Shri with me in addition to to working at Channel 5, and he's an incredible mentor to folks who want to be storytellers. So I wish I got to work with him in that way, because we've always been at different stations.
You know what? I bet you will someday.
I mean, we do things on the side, but we don't do any really deep storytelling as far as news goes together, because we've always been at different stations. But all the videos that are on Shri's website, it's through his lens, and he's very much involved with everything that we started. Yes, he's very involved with Shri. All the teachers at Shri know Dave.
And you know, it's so neat because it gives you he gives you another perspective.
Yes, he's a big cook. Big, loves food, an amazing cook. He's really close with my sister too, which I love. All of us get along really well. He's just a good human being.
Yeah.
Talented, good human being. Yeah, we work. I don't think we've ever had a fight. We certainly disagree over things, but we click.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is so good. It's so important.
I'm Italian, he's Greek. It just kind of works.
Well, I imagine that could be really, really kind of
spicy.
Interesting. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But just very, very special. Now, talk to us about Shri.
So Shri in the language of yoga means light, radiance, and abundance. And I've always worked with adults with disabilities on the side in between my professional life, whether it's volunteering at an ARC program, or when I was younger, being in a swimming pool at the Boys and Girls Club, helping out the special needs kids. But it was never anything specifically formalized. So I live in Pawtucket. Downtown Pawtucket has seen brighter days.
Yeah, I know.
So I decided to rent out a storefront in 2010. The rent was reasonable, so I figured if it didn't work, I wouldn't go broke. I would figure it out.
Now, you're doing this on your own?
Totally on my own, yes.
Yeah.
So we rented a beautiful space that needed a little TLC in 2010, and I figured, let's open the doors, let's reach people with programs who otherwise wouldn't have access. And that's how it started, and I was the one of 2 teachers when it started, and we were offering regular yoga classes, if you will.
How did you get started in yoga?
When I moved, well, I practiced yoga intensely, a form of yoga called Ashtanga in New York City, and I practiced a lot at another studio called Jivamukti. And quite frankly, my apartment in New York City was so small, I was just craving space, but the yoga studios were big and airy, and I could have space.
So you could go and have space.
So the yoga studio, so Jivamukti was around the corner from where I was living. So I just went into a class with an open mind and found that I really enjoyed the quiet, the physicality of it. Ashtanga yoga is a very physical practice. I don't practice Ashtanga anymore. I practice a vinyasa flow, but also outreach is very different. But I appreciated the time to kind of tune in.
Just to be.
Yes, and just to be in community with other people. So then when I moved to Rhode Island, my news director and dear friend, Betty Jo, I was working a night shift, and I told her, you know, on the side, I would really love to study more. And I was at a studio in Newport, and they were offering a teacher training. So I did it. I did. She helped me work out the schedule, and I became a certified yoga teacher in 2006 for classes that you would see at a commercial yoga studio. But my thought was always, I get a lot out of this. And it's not even about the physicality of it so much anymore. It's not about... Nothing wrong with Lululemon. I love Lululemon. They're one of our funders. But I'm teaching now in jeans and T-shirts. It's much more of a practice about building community and being with people who otherwise wouldn't have space to kind of shine. So yoga means to connect, to yoke. And Shri, in the language of yoga, means abundance and radiance. So we called it Shri Studio to kind of bring light into downtown Pawtucket.
Yeah.
So I started with, regular classes, and then
in this one little
on Broad Street, 21 Broad Street. And I love designing spaces, so that was a lot of fun. So I got to design my first space. Jim Gillen, you would have loved, Sally, you would have loved Jim Gillen. He started the Anchor Recovery Community Center in downtown Pawtucket, a peer-to-peer program funded by the Providence Center, where I was serving as a board member. And Jimmy just walked up the street, because we were a block from one another, and said, how do you feel about some folks before or after an AA or an NA meeting coming to a yoga class?
Wow.
So I said, of course, when should we start? And he said, there's no time like the present. So we started. That was our first outreach program. And that's when it became very clear to me that this is what we were going to do.
I can just
Jimmy's
imagine.
still very much with me in a lot of different ways. He passed a few years ago. We still honor him every year with the Jim Gillen Spotlight Award and honorary award to people in our community. I always knew I was opening up that space to literally bring light into downtown, to open up an otherwise quiet, dark building. And then I figured the door's open. Whoever wants to show up will show up, right? As long as we're available. And then the outreach became very specific when Jim came. Then schools started reaching out to us, so then we started the school project with Blackstone Valley Prep. A PE teacher called and said, can you come to our PE class and bring some yoga? So I had 2 teachers who had a ton of experience working with kids, Sunny and Hannah, so they jumped in and we started building a curriculum. And then adaptive, for me, made perfect sense, working with adults with intellectual, physical, and developmental disabilities. And Flying Shuttles is an art studio that was right across the street from us on Broad Street, down Main Street. And I knocked on the door and I just said, I'm Alison, I'm the
Alison,
one running
here
Shri. Would you guys be interested in doing a yoga class? And Tony, at the time, the program director, we always joke, because she said, well, we don't have any funding. I said, it's free, don't worry about it. I don't know if they'll like it. I said, well, let's give it a try. So we started a Wednesday class in 2012, right before we started the nonprofit side of Shri, with that group. And we still teach that group every Wednesday at 12:30. It's me and Shannon who teach that group, even during the pandemic, Sally, on Zoom. We didn't skip a beat.
Isn't that great?
The adaptive program picked up, and then we started building more and more programs at Bradley Pediatric Hospital, women's shelters, you name it, we're pretty much there. We serve more than 8,500 Rhode Islanders every year. 90% of the students who come to Shri come for free, either sponsored through their hospital, their school, the agency they're coming through, or our own 501c3 nonprofit will sponsor the classes. So it's free to both the students and to the agencies to which they belong. And there's a whole team of us. There's 40 plus of us teaching and running Shri 7 days a week.
Oh my goodness. And here you started just yourself, this one little place.
Yeah, we just started with one space and one class.
You know, Einstein said there are no coincidences. Coincidences are God's way of remaining anonymous. And obviously, this has just been flowing.
It has, and I always figured I wasn't going to push anything. I was just going to be present and skilled at the same time. When we started doing more and more outreach work, I started doing more and more training when it came to working with folks with trauma.
In your spare time, of course.
Yeah, I know, but you make time for the things that matter, right?
That's for sure.
And then we started our own curriculum, and now we train teachers on that curriculum, so that when a Shri program goes into a school, shelter, recovery center, you name it, there's a certain methodology that we use that we know is safe and effective.
Exactly. And I think it gives it's easier for the instructors as well to have some kind of.
And we have a system built in. So an example would be the Looking Upwards class we teach in Newport Tuesday morning. Susan DeSantis is the Shri trained and certified teacher, and I'm her sub. So if she goes away on a fabulous vacation or needs a break, I step in for her. So it's one of us always showing up for that group, which decreases anxiety rate because they're familiar with us.
Course,
and the curriculum they're familiar with too.
Sure.
So,
which really works.
It does work, and you can't really be effective in outreach work if you're not efficient. So I'm very much sensitive to people's time. And I want to make sure that we respect people's time. So once you're trained and a class is set up, the rest of it just kind of moves. We have systems in place so that all of our teachers get paid, whether or not the class is funded through our nonprofit or not. But we have a great bookkeeper in place. We have systems so that at the end of the month, we press one button and the payroll report's generated and the checks go out. So we spend the majority of our time teaching versus administering. That was always a goal of mine.
Yeah, because
you can't scale otherwise.
No, you can't.
Right.
And that's so important. So through the nonprofit, you're able to reach out to so many people.
We are, especially when programs get cut, like during the pandemic, and unfortunately things like music and art and yoga will get cut, but we can say, no problem, we don't need to interrupt the schedule, we can fund it ourselves. So we usually start with new partners doing a matching model so that there's an investment between them and us. And then Shannon, who's our development director and a fabulous teacher to boot too, she does all of our grant writing. So we work with Blue Cross Blue Shield, CVS, Lululemon, Fogarty Foundation, so many different foundations on the program side. And since before the pandemic, we purchased an old blighted mill.
I want to hear about this.
In Pawtucket, we've gotten other support
I
for that.
have seen that mill, and that's
how we met.
Yes, yes, yes. With Sandra.
Yes, Sandra, that's amazing.
But that is, talk to us about that.
We have outgrown so many spaces. So Pawtucket, I live in Pawtucket. So the whole idea was I was going to invest in the community I live in. And Pawtucket has seen brighter days. When the mills and all the industry left, the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution in the United States. And when the industry went away, a lot of change happened. So there's all these beautiful mills. So the Mayor Don Grebian, knew that we were outgrowing space. So we were on Broad Street, then we were at the Armory, then we were in Hope Artiste. Everything was fine, but we needed more than one studio and one set amount of space. We also needed parking, quite frankly, with all of the school buses that were coming to us and handicapped vans. And everywhere we went, that was a challenge. Word of mouth, so Rhode Island. The mayor heard we needed space. He also knew that I wanted to invest, like purchase space and do some commercial real estate as well, really dig in. He introduced me to a wonderful man named Dave, who owns a huge 150,000 square foot historic mill in Pawtucket, but a smaller spin-off mill was next to it, 15,000 square feet, in the Italianate style, corner of Pine and Conant. The minute I saw it, I fell in love. Purchasing wasn't the issue. It was affordable to purchase for the most part, but renovating it, millions and millions of dollars. So, and I've never done commercial real estate before, but I knew Sri needed a home. So we went into a purchase and sales agreement.
Into the universe.
I just figured it would work out. So we purchased it in 2020. We went back and forth with a purchase and sales agreement in 2018 because we had to remediate, work with DEM outside before we moved inside.
I am so in awe of you.
I did not do this myself. I hired Pawtucket Central Falls Development Corporation, a nonprofit that does this work, to help me develop this building so that we did it with skill. And I knew that I needed somebody who could speak this language. Writing grants for a revitalization project is very different from writing a grant for programs.
And grants are difficult anyway, no matter how you're doing it.
And we expanded our mission. So the building is 15,000 square feet, and while Sri will now get 2 studios under one roof, a treatment center, we have 2 other commercial spaces that are going to a local school, and my first adaptive partner, Flying Shuttles, they're moving in, which is incredible. We are expanding into affordable housing. And that's a whole nother, whole nother way of thinking and operating. So I hired PCF Development to help me with all of that. So we have 8 apartments upstairs, 5 of which are 30-year deed-restricted affordable housing units with a priority going to adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Because we really found in this state that there's a need for folks who may not need to be in a group home, but can't live at home with mom and dad anymore and are seeking some sort of independence. So I'm partnering with Life Inc. to help me with the social service end of that.
Now, when do you see all of this happening?
January. The goal is a ribbon cutting. Sally, you're invited. The goal is to have a ribbon cutting in January. And we have a great team in place. I could not be happier with Stand Corporation, who's our general contractor. And they get the mission of what we're trying to do, in addition to how to actually build it out.
This is so amazing.
It's all about collaboration.
And also you have the insight to see it. And you're
open.
I
go with my gut.
And you're open.
I'm open-minded. I'm thoughtful but fast, right? Because I have to get stuff done.
You get a job done.
I get the job. Journalism has trained me that way. Dave and I talk about this all the time. A lot of people say, how do you get it all done? We're very deadline driven, and I think that's because of our background in journalism. And the busier you are, the more you do, I think, in some ways.
That is so true. Now, I know we don't have an awful lot more time, and I want to know, share with us how you have seen Caring Connections, how you've seen the connections and how you've seen it working and the difference.
Well, you're a great example of this.
But you see, tell us a little bit about
I met you through
all
Sandra.
working.
So Sandra I met through our social enterprise work, and our Shri Bark snacks go into Sandra's Giving Beyond the Boxes. And Sandra called to put Shri Bark snacks into her boxes, and then she contributed to our revitalization work at Pawtucket with our Giving Wall campaign. So I invited her for a tour, and that's how I met you.
Yes, exactly.
So it's just word of mouth. It's showing up to events. It's being very transparent with the work you're doing, and I answer pretty much every email within 24 hours a day.
I know that.
And phone
I know
calls
you've
too.
answered all of my emails.
I'm very old school when it comes to that because I think people want to be heard. And Rhode Island is a small state as far as geography goes.
Everyone knows everyone in Rhode
Yes,
Island.
so I think if your work is good and meaningful, the connections just happen amongst like-minded people.
And how do you see the connections between your instructors and your clients? And how do you see that?
So Robin Souza is a great example of that. So she came to Shri for one of our drop-in kind of regular classes, not built around the Shri curriculum. And she said to me, I've got some time, I'd love to volunteer and help. I said, you know what, I could really use some help on the adaptive program because I've got a program director and 2 staff, if you will, and then me. But we had 20 plus students, and there's wheelchairs and walkers. I'm like, just having somebody on the Shri end, in addition to the 2 staff from the agency, would really help. She's like, well, I don't have any experience necessarily working with adults with disabilities. I'm like, if you're just compassionate and show up, let's try it.
Just show
she
up.
now runs the adaptive program at Shri. She has a very full teaching schedule, and she runs the program, and she's a mentor to other new teachers. So there's 40 plus of us, and we're teaching at varying amounts, and we all connect.
And the response that you get from your clients?
We get direct responses from them during a class because we ask, how are you feeling? Do you feel better since you walked in the front door? What do you want to do today? And then from administrators, we'll ask for testimonials too. But the teachers, this model would not work if the teachers weren't trained, but then also kind of let go. So we have systems in place for sure, and each project has a project leader and mentors. But we really believe it's important with our curriculum to let teachers have creative license and teach where they want to teach, how they want to teach, as long as they're working with our values.
And this is how they make those caring connections.
Yes.
Which is so amazing.
And we have built new classes based upon the teachers who come to us and say, I want to teach an LGBTQ class, and I don't see that on the schedule. Can we make that happen?
So you're just reaching out to everyone.
Yes.
It's so amazing how many
Showing
people.
up.
I love that.
Yeah, you just have to be present.
Show up, be present and show up. Now, if our audience, anyone in our audience wants to contact you, how do they find out more?
ShriYoga.org, and it's SHRI.
Look at this.
And we also use that in addition to it meaning in Sanskrit radiance, abundance. It also stands for support, honor, respect, inspire.
And I love
so
that.
Every class starts with one of those values.
And the schools,
we engage in that way.
How many schools, quickly, because I think we only have
dozens.
Dozens of
we
schools.
have schools on wait lists right now. So as soon as we get into Pine Street and we can do after school programming in our space, that's going to bring it to a whole nother level. And we're working with schools too as far as internship programs so kids can work our front desk, learn customer service skills, connect with our teachers. And we've trained adaptive students to also become certified Shri teachers so that they can teach too and get paid.
Oh, that's so
incredible. They feel valued.
Alison, you are so amazing. I just can't tell you. I just so love you. And I know that you just absolutely have to come back. Because there's so much more. And even I'd love to come to one of your classes. And
I'm hoping you'll come to the Hope Center with me on a Friday.
I will.
We're kind of picky about how we can let people come in and out, but you're okay. You can come in.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Usually we let people come after they've trained.
I did want to give you one of the caring coins.
I've seen these before. The caring coins are great. So I would love to action plan, figure out a way to incorporate this into our curriculum with new partners where they can walk away with one after a class.
I love that.
So we'll do
and
that.
I love you. And I thank you so much for being here. And for those of you out there, I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. And I wish we had so much more time, but Alison has promised me she'll come back. So keep on making those caring connections. Until next time, bye.